In this procedure, we're going to remove and install the electronic unit injector. The first step is to shut the fuel off. After that, electrically, we're going to disconnect the injectors. The next step is to remove the fuel supply line. And you want to have a drip pan underneath here. After that, you want to remove the fuel return line on the back of the head. This will allow all the fuel to drain out of the head before we remove the electronic unit injector. Next, take the two hose clamps loose for the crossover pipe and then remove the crossover pipe. Next, we'll remove the valve cover. At this point, even just to remove one injector, we're going to have to remove either this rocker shaft assembly or this rocker shaft assembly. First thing we need to do, even if we're just replacing one injector, we're going to have to remove the entire wiring harness for all 6 injectors. It's really good to have a magnetic tray at this point to keep track of all the washers and nuts. Next, remove the hold-down brackets for the wiring harness. Now we can remove the wiring harness. Set that to the side. All right. Next, we're going to take the adjustment loose on the injector rocker and also on the valve adjustment on the valve rocker arm. And we're going to loosen the adjustment up, take as much tension off as we can. Now that we have the valves loose, we're going to pull the pins for the crossheads out. Not all of them will come out, but this will minimize the chances of us dropping them one down in the engine. So we'll just pull the ones out that are loose. We'll leave the crossheads in. And we'll keep these in order. So we're using a magnetic tray. We'll put that right there so that the cross pins are all, we can go back in the same place. Now we're going to take out the rocker shaft. Before we pull the rocker shaft out, it's important to put the 2 end bolts back in the rocker shafts. That'll prevent the rocker arms from sliding off the end of the shafts. Okay, let's go ahead and lift it out. I've got it. Okay, now we've got the rocker shaft and the rocker arms out. We're going to remove the remainder of the push rods. Next step is to remove the crossheads. Next, we're going to remove the injector hold-down bolt. Now we're going to pry the injector out. Now we have the injector out. Before we reinstall unit injector, we're going to turn the engine over to remove any fluid, either oil or diesel fuel that's dripped down into the cylinder so we don't hydrolock the engine. We'll cover up the hole and we'll clear the area. Then we'll crank the engine over to ensure that there's no fluid in the cylinder. Anytime we remove an injector, if we're going to replace it or to service it, anytime it's removed, we're going to replace the O-rings. And before we reinstall it, we're going to lubricate the O-rings with motor oil. And we'll reinstall the injector. Place the bolt in the holding fixture. Then we'll torque it to 30 foot-pounds. Next step is to install the rocker shaft and the rocker arms. Okay, with the rocker shaft still loose, place the crossheads. And the push rods. Now we'll replace the wiring harness. Now we're going to replace the nuts on the injector harness. First, put a drop of Loctite on the threads. Torque the nuts on the injectors to 18 inch-pounds, which is 1.5 foot-pounds. Not very much.